Now, the greatest idea of all time. Stay tuned for
From the Trenches of Hollywood.
Here are your guru guides from the A-list to the D and everything in between. It's Ted and Craig.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. It's great to be back after a week vacation there. Hope everyone had a nice holiday. Ted, how about you?
Very, very good. It was great. Everybody was healthy and got fed. So good to see you. Good to be back.
Yeah, I heard you did a lot of writing over the holiday.
I did. Got a lot of writing done. The podcast has helped a bit, I think. Get me motivated. So yeah, the snow helps too. There's a lot of snow on the ground right now. So
Oof.
Yeah.
Well, it's been super hot here in Southern California. In fact, it's going to be 90 today. But anyway, I don't want to delay too long. We got a great guest we were talking about last time. Going to bring him out in just a minute. We do have one question that came in that we want to get to real fast. Let's see here. I think I have it right here. And this is from Mr. Witzman.
Yes.
Mr. Witzman, good to hear from you again. And he says, okay, this is interesting, especially after our last show with our novelist, David. Says, if I want to get my novel made into a movie, do I need to write it like a script or leave that for someone else to do?
It's a good question.
Well, they're two different things. So, you know, what will happen is if you write this novel that you're working on, if you want to turn it into a script, then you adapt it from that point. Like a lot of times movies will get turned into a novella of the film after it's made. And those are always based strictly on the script itself and the movie. If your story is going to be more expansive, then write the novel, especially if that's what you started out to do. And they're totally different. So don't try and write your novel as a script. Then it's a script.
Right. Write a comic book. That's what I say. I know somebody did that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, got an adaptation.
Yeah, exactly. So from so many things, they come from so many different ideas when it comes to screenplays and screenwriting, which is great for this. This is a great question for this show. It brings us right into our guest, because today we have a screenwriter, director, producer. This guy is he's been at this now since he was a teenager. And gosh, I know he's at least second generation in the business. We can talk about that a little bit more. But let's bring him out. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest, the great Rolf Kanefsky. Rolf, how are you?
Welcome.
Good to see you guys. Hi.
Good to see you.
Hey, Rolf, thanks for stopping in.
Can I chime in on that question? There's a great little story. A well-known writer named Peter Stone. He wrote this is a fun story. He wrote a screenplay which was eventually made, called Charade, the great movie with Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn. He was trying to sell the script around town. Nobody bought it. Nobody is interested. So he took it back, and then he wrote a book of the story. The book sold. And then they hired him to write the screenplay, and then he sat around for weeks twiddling his thumbs until he just handed the script that was written in the first place. So there you go.
Exactly. So I wonder. I haven't read the book. Is the book? Is it just a parallel of the script, or does it expand more?
I think he novelized it, so he's written in theater. He's written every format. I never read it either, but he told that story that he couldn't sell the script, and then when the book sold, he got hired to write the script. So yeah, it's funny.
How ironic! That's awesome. That's great.
That's Hollywood. Yeah.
There you go, Mr. Witzman.
That is Hollywood. That's cool.
So Rolf, how about I don't want to give the general question, but here it is. Throw it out there. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself. A quick little Rolf bio.
Okay, so basically, I'm from New York City. I got interested in film at the age of 4 when I fell in love with Abbott and Costello movies. My father introduced me to them on television every Sunday at 11:30, Channel 11. And so comedy was always kind of my forte. I was writing before I could even write. I would tell stories to babysitters, and they would translate them before I actually knew the writing. But I was always coming up with stories and writing stuff. I finally knew early on that I wanted to be in the business and be a writer-director. When I was like 13, 14, I got a video camera. Started writing scripts. After I read a bunch of screenplays, I went to conventions and bought screenplays to learn the format. And then I took a course at HB Studios in New York on screenwriting, where I and a friend of mine were one of the only people that actually did all the assignments, because there's a lot of people that talk about wanting to be a writer, but they don't actually do the work, or they get a few pages into it, get frustrated, redo it, and never get past that. So I always sort of early on learned to finish everything you start. And even though you're going to probably hate it at some point, to always get to the end of it, because it's probably not as bad as you think it is. And it's writing is always rewriting anyway. So it's always going to be a process. And then when I was 20 years old, I really, really wanted to direct. I was going to college at Hampshire, and I was making short films. My parents thought I was ready. I'd written a few screenplays at that time, and this was the late 80s. And I felt that horror films were sort of the way into the industry. A lot of people would start with first-time filmmakers, even from television with Spielberg, Oliver Stone with The Hand, Coppola with Dementia 13. This was sort of the way in for first-time filmmakers. You didn't need a lot of money or big names. So I had written a script called There's Nothing Out There from watching tons and tons of horror films. And that was kind of a horror comedy, because as I was writing it, I couldn't do all the cliches I'd seen in all the horror films seriously. So I had a character who'd seen every horror film on video, and basically came up with the idea of how do you survive a horror film. And this was my nugget of an idea for that, which then years later, there was a famous movie that Wes Craven did called Scream that kind of took that and made a fortune with it. But mine was done 6 years beforehand, turned into its own cult movie over the years, and that sort of became my calling card into the business.
Great movie.
Awesome.
I love There's Nothing Out There. It's total classic. If you get a chance, folks, you can find it. There are showings that midnight showings. Sometimes there's
a great Blu-ray that came out 2 years ago through Vinegar Syndrome. They did a fantastic every bell and whistle you can imagine on that disc, and we might do a re-release in the next coming year or so as a box set with some of my other films if things go as I hope.
It has been years, and I look forward to watching it again now that we've met. Now I can't wait. I'm gonna dissect it, and hey, I know him now. Can't wait. Awesome.
Okay.
So
Cool.
you actually, it's interesting some of the points you just made, because one of the reasons that we started this podcast was that we get questions from people all the time about how we get things done and what our process might be or what they should be trying to do. So instead of us just trying to field them alone, we put this together and we're bringing in people like you, and you hit right on it. What we're talking about right now is we're trying to help people get through from that idea to get it on paper, to get those pages written. And you said it, so many people start, but they never get past those first couple of pages, or they keep rewriting those first couple of pages. What is it? How do you start your process? What is the first thing you do? Are you an outline guy? Are you just a free writer? What do you do?
Well, obviously, I've pretty much I'm a writer director, but I've made a living mostly as a writer, because you can write faster and pay the bills. So over the course of time, I've written scripts that were my own ideas that I wrote on spec. If I'm writing my own story, I sort of do the work in my head. So I know a lot of people use index cards and map out their stories. I tend to come up with it and make it up as I go along. Maybe I'll have the ending in mind, and then I have to figure out how to get there. I always write in order myself. I just like to see the pace of a story, and I write in my mind like the view of an audience. That am I interested? Am I bored? How do you keep it moving along and keep it going? However, when I get an assignment, like if someone else comes to me with an idea, they almost always want a treatment or a beat sheet to basically map out the story, which I actually push to, because I want to make sure everyone's on the same page and we're all writing. I'm writing the script that is the one that everyone wants, because in every genre there's different types of tones in the movie, and if you don't have the same mentality, the same sense of humor, the same idea of what the story's going, you could run into a lot of problems and rewrites, which will happen anyway. But you want the first script to be as clean, as clear as possible before the actors and everybody else gets involved and messes it all up.
Yeah, exactly. I've made that comment so many times. Yes, I only have so much control. Once it leaves my hands, you dropped some terminology there. Tell everyone what a beat sheet is, because that is a movie thing.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, a beat sheet is it's an outline usually done between a screenplay there's the screenplay, which is a 3-act structure, or a television movie. I've done a lot of Lifetime movies and Hallmark type of stuff, and that's a 9-act structure. But what you're doing is you're mapping out what happens in each sequence of your script. So a lot of times, and because people don't want to read, especially executives, sometimes this will be a 1-page. For Hallmark and Lifetime especially, it's a 1-page where you break down the 9 acts into little paragraphs that can fit on 1 page, because they actually don't want you to go over a page at all. Then you'll ask you to elaborate, but they want it as tight as possible, just because they don't want to read. And with a screenplay, you tend to do, in my case, like a 3 to 5 page beat sheet, which you divide up the 3 acts, and then you write down the 10 to 15 to 20 scenes that happen in each act, which is roughly, every 30 pages. 90-page script is the 3-act structure, and that's how you work that out. So that's sort of what a beat sheet is, which is different from a treatment, which is more of a like a novelization, a short novelization of your piece, where you're just writing big paragraphs of explaining what your story is, and that can be anywhere from a few pages to 90 pages, which in some cases people write the whole thing out like a book.
Wow. Yeah. Craig, can I jump in and ask him, is he a log line guy? I have to. I got to ask you. So are you
log
a log
lines?
line guy?
Well, log lines are, everyone wants them. So you always, they want log line is a 1-sentence pitch of what your story is. The best way to usually do it sometimes is it's something meets something, because
that's good. That's very true. Yeah.
So one of my times with a friend of mine, I take his line because it was great. He was doing a parody in a restaurant, and they were trying to order ham and eggs, and they said it's ham and fries, I think, ham and French fries, and it was like it's Babe meets Les Mis.
So we were talking. Let's go back to this though. When you have some of these original ideas, do you feel like that you come up with the ending more often than anything else, and you just try to write to that?
No, sometimes yes. There was one script which with my own scripts, anything can trigger the idea. I mean, sometimes it's another movie, sometimes it's something I see in a store and something hits me, or a box cover, and I'll suddenly be like, "Oh, that's interesting." There was one script I wrote years and years ago that was eventually made as a different title, called Photographs, and that was, I think I'd seen Cape Fear, I'd seen The Player, and I thought the idea of a, sort of a thriller where a family's in jeopardy and they're being terrorized by someone, and then there's a big twist at the end that the person who's your hero that's being stalked is actually the villain, and the person stalking them is trying to get revenge for something you didn't know about. So it was a flip on the whole thing. And I thought that was something I hadn't seen. So I had the ending, and I wrote the first 30 or something pages, but I didn't have the middle. And in that case, I put the script aside for a little while and waited until I thought of enough stuff to keep the second act going to get to the third act. As time goes, that script was optioned about 3 or 4 or 5 different times from different producers and actors. So I made money over the years. And then finally, someone came to me about Lifetime wanting to do female-driven thrillers. And I thought, well, I could take that, reverse the sexes, make the female the protagonist. And that became a movie called Watch Your Back, or Killer Photo, with Annalyn McCord. That turned out really, really well. So that was
awesome.
That's
awesome.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like these ideas are always developing over time.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes forever. Sometimes things get made. Usually the stuff you really care about takes forever to get made, whereas the little stupid assignments that come up get made really, really fast. And you have to write the script overnight and go into production. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. How many screenplays have you written now? Because I haven't asked you this question in probably 10 years. And what do you think you're up to now?
Well, you're never supposed to. I mean, a lot of people say you don't. It's about quality, not quantity. So but right now, full scripts is 188.
Wow.
Yeah, and 87 have been produced over the years, which is not a bad track record for this business. Yeah.
You're a writer, my friend.
Yeah,
thanks.
You're a writer.
Very proud of that.
Thank you.
What do you do? What are you working on right now? What's new?
Well, I'm always developing lots of irons in the fires because the way the world is right now, you never know what's going to go on. So I've been there's my pet projects I've been trying to make forever, and then there's assignments that come up. So most recently, I just got hired to write a beat sheet that will, if they like it, will be a new version of the script from a screenplay that someone wrote that wanted help on it. That's in the horror thriller genre and wanted me to, if they thought of me. I met them 15 years ago and just out of the blue contacted me about it. So I just started working on that and written a seven-page beat sheet in this case that'll be handed in a couple days. And I've got a project that I wrote as a spec script that I've been shopping around, that actually I'm looking for a female director because it's a very female-driven script, and I would love to do it, but with the way the world is right now, I think it could get going with a female director. So I've been sending it to actors and things, and that's a very interesting, very dark psychological thriller called Guilt by Innocence. That's and that was totally and that was something that I saw a movie, and it was a bad movie, Bruce Willis movie, but straight to video. But there was one scene in it that it triggered the idea that I said, they've made tons of these kind of movies, but they've never focused on this part of that kind of genre. And I thought that was something fresh and original, and that's how the whole thing came about.
Very
so
cool.
that
Wow.
Yeah,
that's great.
You have written in so many genres, really: comedy, horror, suspense, family dramas, kids movies, really across the board. You have written for everything. What is your favorite genre? What do you really like to write in?
My specialty in my mind has always been comedy. I mean, comedy just comes naturally to me. I have the one-liners and the sarcasms. I grew up, with Neil Simon and Abbott Costello and all the comedians, and I love His Girl Friday. So Preston Sturges, Howard Hawks, Cary Grant, that rapid fire, comedy is always what I do. But I also love Hitchcock thrillers, and Hitchcock, of course, had a great sense of humor in a lot of his films. So there was a good humor on that. So I enjoy thrillers because you can get a little bit of everything in there. You can kind of do a smorgasbord where there can be a little romance, a little suspense, some action. If you can make it all work, it's great. North by Northwest style type of movie. But as a writer, and some people like saying, well, if you write so many genres, you shouldn't be able to do them well. I love all movies. I mean, I love musicals. I love Disney. Everything. So you find what part of you and what type of films you like in that genre, and then you can still make your skill set work for that. Because like I'll say, I did back in the day when I was first getting started, I worked with a French producer on a lot of late night cable movies, sort of like sexy, soft erotic genre stuff. And everyone said, be careful about that because if you get known, it wasn't pornography, but it was, there was plenty of nudity. But they were comedies. They were sexy comedies. I did a James Bond parody. I did all this stuff. Then when I started doing these Hallmark romantic comedies that are more G-rated television friendly, they're the same type of movie. Because I said I was doing like Disney for adults in those movies. You just take out the adult content and you still have the same jokes and sense of humor. So it all works. The jokes and the lines still work for different audiences, and as I said, I even did a crazy musical comedy called Adventures into the Woods that I said was for children of all ages over 18.
Great marketing. Great marketing.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. So as a writer, director, producer, all of the above, I guess, do you prefer directing? Or is it a combo thing?
Well, writing, as we said before, writing is a very personal thing that you basically are an audience of one. you need, if you're writing for yourself, then you don't have to please anyone but yourself. If you're writing as an assignment, you obviously have to know what your financier is, producer wants. So you have to appeal to him while still making something that you like, because it's very hard to work on a project if you're not into it. You have to, even if it doesn't turn out well, you have to convince yourself you're doing something good. Because if you sit there writing something you think is garbage, it's going to be garbage, and you'll make yourself miserable. So you have to find that kernel of how you can attach yourself to it.
Yes,
However,
I know that. I know that feeling well. I know that. And it's not always just as the writer. Sometimes it's that hired gun producer. You're coming and it's like
all the time. Yeah.
This has got to fill some kind of void for someone somewhere. Right?
Somewhere, yes. And so you put yourself into everything you write, most likely. But a screenplay is, unlike a book, a screenplay is meant to be filmed, as a TV show or a movie or whatever it is. So it's, people always say they don't like to call it blueprint, but in a way it is for what the final goal is. So if it's unmade, it's unfinished, so you have an unfinished baby there. So when you direct a movie, that's when all the elements come together, and then the actors bring that thing to it. You find the magic on the set, you discover things. I've written plenty of stuff that I've directed, and I've had a lot of stuff I've written that other people have directed. And when you're just a writer, you usually are never that happy with the final result, because no one will make the way you would make it. The old rule was, if you write something and it gets produced and there's 3 scenes you can recognize from your original screenplay, you should be happy, and I know that feeling, but I also have been lucky enough to have a bunch of them have turned out pretty good to the script. I'm like, they followed it to a T and it worked. One of the nicest compliments I had from a director friend of mine who did a lot of my films, a low budget director, he said that my scripts are director proof, that if you just shoot what's on the page, you have a movie. And that's a good sign of a good movie, that you can see the movie and it's like, it's right there. And,
it's got to be a compliment. Yeah.
That was a very nice compliment. Yeah.
I've had the honor to read several of Rolf's scripts, and I will say that you don't want to put it down. They're page turners in every genre. It's just, you're a great writer, Rolf. I respect your work so much. Let me ask you this a little bit more on your process. Do you like carve out specific hours of the day to write? Do you just write whenever? Do you have a daily goal for yourself?
Well, I don't. I've been told that a writer should write every day. I don't do that. I'm thinking all the time. So a lot of times, if I'm not writing, it's the thought process. I'm developing it in my head. However, when I get an assignment or I start a screenplay, I personally used to put myself on it. I want to do at least 5 pages a day. That was sort of the original goal, because I can usually do that, and I probably do a little bit more than that. Sometimes, and many times, I've gotten very strict deadlines where they need the script in 2 weeks or less, sometimes much less. And I'm sitting here saying, okay, I have to do 10, 15 pages a day sometimes to get to that. And I can do that too. The good thing is, when I start a script, and this is me, I get very tunnel visioned, and it's very hard for me to concentrate on anything else until I reach the end of it. So I don't sometimes mean to write, even when I'm writing for myself, I don't mean to write fast. But once you get into the groove of it, it just hopefully keeps spilling out, and you just got to get on the page. And so I feel that, if you're writing something fast, it's going to read fast, and it'll shoot fast. You can see the movie. Whereas if you stop and start a lot and you lose track of where you are, then you have to go back and reread your pages and then see what you did and what you didn't do. That's why sometimes when you're rewriting other people's work, and that happens a lot, there's a lot of times as a writer, you're brought on to revise someone else's script. So for me as a writer, since I am a writer, whenever I'm on that assignment, I try very, very hard to find the voice of the original writer. So you try to match that voice so it doesn't feel like this is being written by different people, because unless they hate the script and it just doesn't work at all, then you've got to do a total revision. There was a script. An example of this was a movie recently made, a romantic drama, relationship drama shot in Bulgaria last year, called Valley of Love. And it was a first-time female writer. She was a film editor, and she wanted to try writing. The producer hired her, and they brought me on to be a consultant to help and read the script and give notes. So I did on the first draft, I did on the second draft, I did on the third draft. It wasn't quite getting there, and the drafts were getting a little messy because she was losing her focus. So they finally said, we need you to come in and do a draft yourself. So I did it. But she had all the elements and everything was there. It just wasn't working the way she wanted it to work. So I did a major revision. And what I'm proud about that is that it's something you probably think I didn't write, because it's such a female driven, even though I do write very strong female characters. It's a very female driven piece. So since I share my name with 2 other female writers on the bit, you're probably thinking I added the jokes and they did all of the, the emotional stuff. But in some scenes, no, I did. I know what I did. And I got in that case, because a lot of times the original writers are not happy with someone rewriting their work. But this woman was very pleased, and she wrote me a beautiful letter talking to me about how I took her idea and really turned it into something that she's very proud of and so happy to have been a part of. And that was a great experience. So that turned out wonderful.
Great. Another great collaboration, sounds like. Well, I mean, again, compliment. So that's great. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's great stuff. So we're running out of time, I'm afraid, man. This has been great chatting with you here, Rolf. Folks, listen, everyone, I haven't said anything about it, but send us your questions. We can get them to Rolf. We got to have you back on.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk.
We're starting the process with a bunch of folks right now where we've been talking about just getting their ideas together. And if you're an outline person, or you're a beat sheet person, or you're whatever you are, if you write a treatment, whatever it is, get something going. And we're going to, our next few shows, we're going to start trying to put some benchmarks together for folks on their ideas. And I know they're going to have a million questions, and they're going to have questions for you. So we got to have you back.
Well, all I say is that the process is different for everyone. I mean, there are so many books on screenwriting and so many courses on screenwriting. And I've taken a few of them, looked at some of the books. I did the Robert McKee course years and years ago, who's, was very famous.
Yep.
And he gave a thing that said, that every script should take at least a year, a really good script to write from beginning to end to get a good draft.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, I know there's too many exceptions to every rule. So, Taxi Driver supposedly was written in a weekend. John Hughes wrote Breakfast Club in a week. There's, sometimes because it's in there and then it just sort of, almost like vomits out on the page. So whenever someone says there's only one way to do it, there's 1,000 ways to do it. And every way works. Some people listen to music, some people, whatever inspires you. So I always say you got to find what your path is rather than trying to copy someone else's method. And then you do that. That's why at one point I was going to do a screenwriting course and try to focus on a small class, because each person should have their own schedule based on who they are and what type of thing they're writing and what their inspirations are, versus like, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
The only rule is there are no rules. And there's never they'll say, every time, the script that should never have been made in a million years was Being John Malkovich. Because you don't write a script specifically for an actor who you have no connection to, that you'll never get him to do, and something that weird, and yet it got made and won the Academy Award, I think, for Best Screenplay. So, I mean, there's just too many times that every time they say that that's what you can't do, that's exactly what works. So that's
You nailed it. You're preaching. I love it. I mean, truth right there, folks. Yeah. That's what we tell everyone. It's like we're all different. I'm a hardcore outline kind of guy, and I always have been, but that's just me. And Sid Fields, read Sid Fields, he'll tell you also it takes months and months and months and months to develop your idea. And so it's everyone's different. It's all different. It is. Everyone's got their own style, their own process. Let me ask you this real quick, Rolf. Do you, when you stop writing for the day, let's say, and you go back, pick it up the next day, do you find yourself, how much review do you do? Or do you just dive right in? I
usually dive right in. I unless there's something very complicated or, there's a lot of character names and you get confused. Sometimes I'll write little notes on the side so I don't have to go. Usually that's if I'm doing someone else's script where you get lost to say who's which character and things like that. If you're writing such at a short period of time or like together in your mind, you can keep it focused so you can just jump from where you leave off. And this is very hard to do sometimes, but if you can leave yourself off where you know exactly the next scene that's coming up, it's much easier to jump versus that you leave off in a place like, well, I don't know what happens next, or I'm not quite sure. It's a hard scene. You can jump right into it because you're like, okay, I'm looking forward to writing this, versus like, oh, I got to get back into this dialogue scene that I don't know what to do, or they just skip the scene and jump to another scene. And, it's just, as I say, the responsibility of, if you want to be a working writer, the whole thing is people have to believe that they trust you to get the job done. and you have to be responsible. You have to finish what you start, because you're given a deadline. You have to make that deadline, and people get very upset if you don't. So you don't give them a deadline that you're never going to make. That you say, I mean, sometimes you just yes everyone, say, oh yeah, you need the script in 2 days. I'll give it to you in 2 days, and then you don't make it, and then they're like, well, you said 2 days, but say, look, I logically I need 2 weeks. I need a month, and that's when I can give it to you. Because if you put yourself under the 8 ball, you're always going to be there, and then you panic, and then you stress out, and then you get ulcers, and no one's happy. So
that's a realistic like Hollywood.
Yeah.
That's a realist approach, though. I mean, that's real. That's completely.
That's real.
Real. That's good.
Again, Rolf, thanks for joining us. And folks, make sure you send us your messages at Hollywood Trenches on Instagram. You can give me a Craig Hollywood. Rolf, where can they find you?
Well, I'm on Facebook. Very easy to reach there. Rolf Kanefsky, as it is below. And I have a website. You can see rolfkanefsky.com. IMDb page has my contact stuff too. So I'm pretty out there, and I keep busy, but I'm always open. And I've tended to be more available to people when they want to, read scripts or give feedback and stuff like that. That I've always been, I feel what goes around comes around. The more you help others, the more it comes back around to you. And that's always been kind of my mentality. And networking is key to this business. So you want to be available to people, and you hope at some point they will be available to you, and help you on the way up or down the line or wherever you're going.
More truth from Rolf. We got to get a podcast going for him. More truth. More truth with Rolf. That's right. We got to do that. That's our thing.
Thanks.
That's our next podcast.
Okay. Sure.
Well, thanks for joining us, Rolf.
Thank you.
We appreciate your time, and everybody look for Rolf's next project. What's it going to be?
Yeah.
What's it called?
Well, we got a few things. Well, the one thing I do have to, I guess I should plug, is I did a movie a couple of years ago called The Hazing, also known as Dead Scared, with Brad Dourif. Brad Dourif, Tiffany Shepard. I just bought the rights to the film, so we're going to be doing hopefully a really nice Blu-ray special 20th anniversary coming up for this movie. Awesome. Perry Shen from the Hatchet movies. I mean, it's a movie actually.
Brooke Baldwin? Brooke Burke. That's it. Yes, that was like her first movie.
Yeah, it was her first movie.
Her, yes.
Yeah. No, it's a really fun Night of the Demons, Hell Night, Evil Dead inspired 80s throwback film, and we're looking for a company now to hopefully come out with a good special edition that we can release as just as a blast from the past that works pretty well today. With today's marketplace, the movie actually, I guess it was woke before anyone was calling things woke. We were just trying to be fun and original and different.
Cool.
So yeah.
All right. He needs to come back on. We got to talk to him longer.
Definitely.
And I won't say what movies or scripts I'm working on that we might be going next year, but nothing is set in stone. So I'll keep it open until I know what the official next project is going to be. There's movies that are in post-production that I wrote that'll be coming out next year. But right now, the next one that I'm directing, well, we're fingers crossed. We'll see.
All right. Well, good luck on that. Thanks for joining us, Rolf.
Thank you so much, Rolf.
Okay.
Have a good day,
see you
man.
next
Stay
time.
healthy. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. Great. Okay. Bye-bye.
That was awesome. What a great guy. What a great guy.
Told you guys.
Yeah.
Experience, a vast amount of experience, just informative, educational. You can learn a lot from Rolf. And honestly, he's talking about the movie The Hazing, the one he was just talking about. Great film. I recommend everyone, if you want to see someone take an idea from page to screen, as he said, like it's never finished. A script's not finished till it gets made. This one, he not only finished it, he nailed it. He hit this thing out of the park. The Hazing. You got to check it out, everybody. Oh my gosh, we're out of time. We got to get out of here.
It flies by here. So thank you. Appreciate you doing this, man. This is great. So
yeah, thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next week. We're going to dive right into our projects. We're going to talk a little bit more about what our next steps are and our benchmarks that we set for ourselves. And send your questions in. Remember, we're on Facebook at, what is it? From the Trenches of Hollywood.
Correct.
And Hollywood Trenches on Instagram.
Yeah.
And
or you can reach us on our Facebook pages or on my webpage.
TedDaviesArtistry.com,
Yep.
at Craig Hollywood. So yeah, reach out, send us questions, messages. We'll get them to Rolf. We'll get them to Dave. We're going to get all these guys back and answer your questions and help you get through your project. And I'm out of here.
Yeah, we got it right, man. We'll talk to you soon, guys. Be safe.
So long, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Northern Grounds Coffee. Fresh, artisan roasted, small batch coffee with pop culture flair. The finest organic suspension ever devised.